All right. Hi, everyone. Happy Wednesday evening. It's your Councilwoman in Ward 4, Nikki Lee. I want to thank you all so much for being here tonight or watching the replay in the future. I want to welcome you to our final town hall of 2020. I'm really excited to be doing this. We've had, this is our fourth town hall this year. When my team and I set out to do these town halls really focused on core services, we originally planned pre-COVID to do a spring town hall and a fall town hall. But since we kind of had to change our strategy and use technology, we've actually been able to double the amount of town halls that we've done this year and find more ways of connecting with all of you. So I'm excited about this opportunity and excited to see what our town hall series looks like next year. So I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end after we wrap up. But tonight we're going to be talking all things public safety and Ward 4. So we have Tucson Fire and Tucson Police on tonight. Kicking us off tonight is going to be a conversation around fire. We have Chief Ryan, and following him is going to be Captain King. Chief Magnus was planning on joining us tonight, but an incident has come up that he has to address. So Captain King is going to fill in for him, and he is our operations division out here on the east side captain, and he will take care of us tonight and get the information that we need from him. And then we will have an opportunity for plenty of questions and answers. So we will have an opportunity to do that as well. So without any more time being wasted, I want to turn it over to Chief Ryan from Tucson Fire for his update for us tonight. Whenever you're ready, Chief.
Thank you, Councilwoman, and good evening, everybody. I'm Chuck Ryan. I'm the Tucson Fire Chief. I've been here in Tucson now just slightly over 1 year, and very excited and honored to be the Fire Chief in this amazing city for this amazing fire department. I want to take just a short period of time and talk to you specifically about what's going on in Ward 4 with Tucson Fire. I have a very brief PowerPoint that I'll talk through, and then give the rest of my time certainly to Captain King, and then hang on for questions at the end. And I sure hope there's a lot, because I'm more than happy to answer your questions. And it's unfortunate we have to do this in the virtual format. I love getting out and talking to community groups in person, and hopefully in 2021 we can make that happen. So I hope this finds you all healthy and safe and happy this evening. So Ward 4 is served by 3 fire stations primarily: Fire Station 13 on East Stella Road, Fire Station 17 on South Houghton, and Fire Station 19 on East Esmond Loop. You have a general idea there. I've thrown in a little Google map just to give you some geographic reference points, but those are the stations from which our men and women serve Ward 4. So what's new and happening in Ward 4? Well, thanks to Proposition 101, the Tucson Delivers Half-Cent sales tax, a lot of great things are happening. And I know this is a little bit of a busy slide, but one of the most important things I want to highlight from Prop 101 is the new and improved structural firefighting personal protective equipment, what we call turnout gear in the fire service, for our men and women. This stuff has changed a lot in the past few decades. I came into the fire service in 1990, and the quality of the gear then was much different than it is now, and it's a much stronger emphasis on really placing your firefighters in a true protective ensemble that protects them not only from thermal elements, from heat and fire, but also from the products of combustion. From those products, you know, as time has gone on, we've moved away as a society from natural fabrics and frames for furniture to plastics and acrylics and such, and that stuff, being a chemical product versus a natural product, is highly toxic when it burns. And so our firefighters need to be as safe as we can. And certainly here in Tucson, we are a national leader with respect to awareness of cancer and the impacts on the fire service, both nationally and internationally. And this department is well renowned across the nation, across the globe, for our efforts in cancer mitigation and reduction strategies. And part of that is thanks to Prop 101 and the gear we get. Some other stuff you see in there in the lower right, those bottom 2 pictures, that's one of our upgraded cardiac monitors. Those things have also come a very long way since I first came in the fire service. I remember when the first cardiac monitor came out, it weighed about 60 pounds. You probably needed wheels to safely carry it. But now these things are down to 12 or 13 pounds, and It is basically the same equipment that you will find in a state-of-the-art emergency room in terms of cardiac monitoring and basic vitals monitoring, and we take it on the road. It's completely mobile and hand carried. And the picture you see on the far right in the bottom is a display of something that is really not good. You don't want to see that, but that's the kind of data it gives our paramedics to provide the best care possible to our residents and visitors. And then the middle three pictures are improved station alerting systems through US Digital Designs, or USDD. And these alerting systems have come a long way as well. Back in the day, it used to be a fire alarm would come into a station and the bells would go off and the firefighters would have to go to the trucks to see or hear what the dispatch was, what type of event they were going to. Well, thankfully, we've come a long way with smart and addressable technology, which allows the firefighters to see in video display what they're being dispatched to. The picture on the far right is actually a television monitor that hangs on the wall that between the living space and the apparatus bay, again, giving them a bigger picture of where they're going, what they're being dispatched to. And in the upper right of the TV screen, you see a green 77. That's a turnout timer. We call a turnout timer. And one of the benchmarks we use in the fire service as part of being a Class 1 ISO organization is our turnout times. And we strive for no more than 60 seconds to get out the door for a medical call and no more than 90 seconds on a fire call. And the difference in time, you may wonder, why does that exist? Well, for medical calls, the firefighters can go in their station uniform. They don't have to put on that protective ensemble that you see in the top pictures. It takes a little bit of time to don that stuff if they're going to a fire call. So hence the difference in times there. But those are some of the hardware things that have come to Ward 4 and across the city of Tucson in recent years. So Fire Station 13 serves you with a engine company and a EMS unit, a paramedic truck. Minimum staffing of 6 out of that station. You'll see their little logo there, their station design logo, sort of a throwback to military, the esprit de corps kind of thing. We allow our stations to come up with relevant and community-friendly designs, and so it gives some company pride. So what you see there, again, this is another one of the 2 of the newer Prop 101 purchased units, a 2019 Pierce Enforcer pumper, or engine as we call them, and then the 2018 Dodge 5500 ambulance, basically a medical intensive care unit on wheels. One of the neat features you see in the bottom pictures there is the stretcher, and you see if you look in the one on the left, the wheels are off the ground, nobody's holding onto it. It's got a self-loading mechanism. It will safely lift a patient who's close to 500 pounds into the stretcher and onto the stretcher and into the back of the ambulance, and that's a big back saver for us. It's an ergonomic design. It cuts down on employee injuries and therefore keeps your firefighters and paramedics working rather than off dealing with a back or shoulder injury. It's a neat new thing, and it's becoming a national standard in ambulance design across the country. Station 13 is slated for a remodel. It opened in 1973, so it's got a few years on it in terms of a commercial use facility, and a lot of the safety enhancements that are existing in some of the newer Tucson fire stations are not quite there yet for Station 13. So that is part of what we call a second round of remodel packages that'll be coming up in the next couple of years. Won't get a full rebuild, but we'll get some nice enhancements to make the firefighters a little more comfortable in the stations and make it a safer and healthier work environment. Fire Station 17, the Fantasy Island station. This station only has 1 truck in it. You see it there. It's what we call a quint apparatus, and that's because it's got both a aerial device, 90-foot aerial ladder, as well as a 1,500 gallon per minute pump and a 500 gallon water tank. So or 450 gallon water tank. So it serves multiple functions, and it can operate as an engine, as you saw in the prior picture, with hose and a pump, or as an aerial device, or both. It's staffed with 4 personnel, one of whom is always a paramedic. It's called what we call a PAU, a paramedic assessment unit. So that means you have a paramedic on the fire truck 24/7 running out of Station 17. And then the other neat thing we have at Station 17 now, and specifically because of the Fantasy Island area and the bicycle enthusiasts, the off-road enthusiasts back there, and folks get injured back on those trails, is the UTV you see there, which allows us to access patients more quickly and safely where we can't get our heavier apparatus back in. And if I had a picture of the back of that unit, you'd see it has a patient care area on the very back, so a stretcher can lay flat on it, and we can transport a patient out to a waiting medic truck or ambulance. Station 17 opened in 1988. It is also part of the second package of remodels slated for us. It'll be in the next couple of years, although we don't have a date certain on that. And lastly, Fire Station 19 near Areta Ranch. This station also has an engine and a medic truck. Newer station, opened in 1996, so no immediate plans for any remodel or refurbishment of the station. But it is a somewhat older, in terms of fire apparatus, pumper. It still performs perfectly well, but it's a 2011 Pierce Saber. And then you see a medic truck down there. It looks a little bit different than the Dodge you saw previously. This medic truck, a 2008 MedTech on an International Harvester chassis. This model, you know, for those that have been around a while, you may remember the van type ambulances. If you're maybe as old as me, you remember the Cadillac style ambulances. But fire equipment and EMS equipment matures and ebbs and flows over time. And so what you're seeing here is what is known as a medium duty truck style. There was a period of time in the fire and EMS service when this was considered the best standard for an ambulance, especially one that gets a fair amount of use. With recent vehicle design enhancements, things have kind of gravitated back and gone that cycle back toward a smaller pickup style on a pickup frame and chassis box ambulance. So this ambulance you see here, this medic truck and this engine will be replaced probably in the next several years with similar equipment to what you saw for Station 13. And then in the lower left, you see two quick pictures and you say, yeah, Chief, thanks, that's a door into a place where they hang up their gear. But what's important about this is when the station was designed and opened in 1996, there wasn't as much emphasis on cancer in the fire service. And what you see here is an apparatus bay that's got positive ventilation, so the firefighters can bring their gear back to the station, wash it. We have commercial extractors in our station, and then hang their gear in an open air locker to dry, and it's separated from the apparatus bay by that door because when the vehicles fire up, those particulates from the diesel exhaust travel through the air and candidly would get into the firefighter's gear. So they were wearing gear that they would wear to a fire, which might have old products of combustion still trapped in the fibers, and then we were putting diesel particulate matter on top of it. So this just a simple enhancement by putting a positive pressure ventilated room with an enclosed door and separating it from the apparatus bay, so when the firefighters are off duty and storing their gear, it's not getting that repeated exposure, is a big plus, a big safety enhancement for a pretty low price tag. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and turn it back over to Councilwoman Lee and let Captain King have some time, and I'll hang on for your questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Chief. We already have a couple questions rolling in, but I know we'll go over to Captain King and then we'll do all the questions together. So it's all yours, Captain King.
Well, thank you very much, and appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight with everybody. Unfortunately, like Councilwoman Lee said, the chief, who was planning on being here up until about a half an hour before we started, was unfortunately taken down to a call that required his response. But he does send his regards and wishes he could be here, and so hopefully for 2021 we'll be able to make that happen. I'm also very pleased to be here with Chief Ryan. I'm very fortunate as a community to have him here. He's a great asset, and is a great partner for us at TPD. And some of the items he mentioned and some of the cooperation that we have is really in strong part to his leadership and continued work together here in the division and really across the city. So I'm really pleased to be here with him. So let me tell you a little bit about what TPD is doing in Ward 4 and throughout the division. So my name again is Colin King. I've been the captain out here for about just under 3 months. And before that, I was actually Chief Magnus's chief of staff for nearly 2 years. So what we have here is a full service, what we call a division. So I'm the captain here. I have several lieutenants that work with me and help lead the division. We have nearly 140 personnel assigned just to the east side. The personnel include officers, so those are the people you'll see driving with police car, police car with the lights on top, responding to calls for service, doing traffic enforcement and education, that type of stuff. We also have what are called community service officers, or CSOs, and those will be the individuals you see in light blue shirts. And they help us with a variety of items, and we just really are fortunate to have them. They will respond to traffic accidents, they'll respond to point control, they'll help out with a variety of calls that don't involve interaction with the suspect or require police power, so like an arrest, for example. They can't do that, but they really can do a lot of other things. And their role is actually expanding within the department as a whole. So you may see them in bright green uniforms when they're out patrolling the parks. So for example, we'll send them out to Udall Park, or we'll send them out to Lincoln Park, and they'll ride around, they'll offer up assistance to homeless individuals, they'll help provide a sense of security, they're there to answer questions. It's just a great resource. And so please, if you see them out at one of the local parks, don't be afraid to stop by. That's what they do, that's what they're there for. And they're also taking on an additional role in investigations, so they're helping out our detectives. So they're in the division as well. We also have our own detective unit, so I'm able to call on them for any kind of calls related to, property crimes, for example. If there's other incidents that are happening in your neighborhood that require a little bit more attention, either something that a police officer can't do within the scope of the time in their shift, and it's going to take a couple days, or a larger scale event that maybe crosses boundaries or involves many suspects, we'll engage our detectives that are actually assigned to the division here. They're specifically for you here in Team 4, is what we call Operations Division East. And they're able to help investigate. They could do recorded interviews, they could do warrants, they deal with the county attorney. So it's really a full-fledged detective unit that I have here as well. And then of course we have other variety of administrative folks that help us staff the front desks and deal with public inquiries and answer your questions. So when you look at across the country, there's about 18,000 or so law enforcement agencies of all different shapes and sizes. When you look at just our division, so the 140 personnel here doing all the work that we do, we have about what we would consider a mid-sized police agency just here in the division. So so we're pretty fortunate in that respect. One of the other things that has recently changed, and I know it's usually a hot topic, is traffic, and either speeding vehicles, or we're having other traffic-related incidents inside of the school zones, in your neighborhoods, those types of things. We have the ability to call over some motorcycle officers, and they're actually responding to our division here. And you may see them on Speedway. We have a facility at 7575 East Speedway where we house the motors. They're able to respond all over the division for any kind of concern. So when you call me, or you've called one of my team members and say, hey, this is really getting bad, we're having speeders in the neighborhood or something like that, we have divisional assets that we're able to send out to address those concerns. So that's kind of the overview of Operations Division East and what we have out here. The reason I'm sharing my screen is because I want to show what's pretty cool that we've recently implemented. So it's not perfect, it's still kind of a beta test form, but it is absolutely available to anybody. You can log on, and it's www.tucsonaz.gov/police. So it's kind of up here in the corner. That'll take you to the public-facing website, and the very first thing at the top here is what says Visit TPD's new data dashboard. Now, the reason this is so cool is, one of the major questions that we get is, what are the crime stats? What's it look like in my neighborhood? What's it look like in the ward? And we're able to get that to you, but it's kind of cumbersome. Sometimes you'll either have to call the station, or go through the ward office, and we're able to put it together and send it to you. Well, now we finally have the ability through our analysis section to they've put together this great series of dashboards. So let me just show you what it looks like real briefly, and you can go and explore And it's, like I said, it's all public facing. You're able to access any of the stuff I'm about to show you right from your computer or desktop. So you go to the dashboards and it'll take you to the home screen here, Tucson Police Data and Analysis. So if you're not familiar, just real briefly, Tucson Police, with the support of the council, which has been very, very helpful, we've been able to develop an actual analysis division. It's headed by Dr. Jay Kramer, PhD, who has a lot of experience in police analytics and putting together stats and being able to put them in a format that we're able to actually use. And that's one thing, one of the most frustrating thing for police commanders is, you know, we know crime is happening, or we know there's issues out there, but we don't know exactly where and we don't know when. And we'd like to be able to have it at our fingertips so we could address it quickly and send the resources where they need to go. Well, like I said, thanks to the leadership of the council and working with us at the department here, we have been able to create this. So you'll go to this main screen, just kind of scroll down. You could look at use of force, police activity. I'll just show you reported crimes right now, since that's kind of one of the major things. You could go to reported crimes. It'll take you directly to our screen here that you would like to go to the data. It also tells you how to report a call and kind of gives other information. So you please take your time and review as much as you'd like. So once we've gone to show us the data, it'll open it up, and I'm just going to take you to part 1, crime. So part 1 is any of the crimes that are, you know, the major incidents. So violent crimes, homicides, sexual assaults, aggravated assaults, and then property crimes. So burglaries, larcenies. So I'll double click on that. And then real quick, I'm just going to show you how you could look at your ward specifically. So right up here at the top, it'll tell you could look by year, you could look by month, you could look at the whole division if you'd like. Since we're having a Ward 4 town hall, let me just show you Ward 4 real quickly. And it'll take you kind of to the map view. So this will be year to date for 2020 and all of the different types of criminal calls that we have received at the beginning of the year. If you'll notice, cumulatively up here at the right, all types of crimes that have been reported are down approximately almost 22% here in the ward. So as you go to the top, the little toggle switches here, you can go back and forth and just look at the time of day that the incidents are happening, the day of the week that they're happening. We'll take you to the types of crimes, so you're able to look at all of the different criminal types and the breakdowns, where they happen and when. So it's a really cool tool. I know we're kind of running short on time, so I just wanted to give you a brief intro to that. You could look at all types of things. And the goal of the department and Chief Magnus's vision for this is that almost everything that we do will be available for the public to access from their computer or from a library, you know, anywhere that they are, so that you'll be able to get the same information that I'm able to get. So I'm going to take this off of the screen here so that we can have it all back. And I think I'm back normal. And so then real briefly, just to talk about the last thing that the chief wanted to make sure everyone was aware of. I know that it's a very hot button issue right now related to the election coming up. There's a little bit of nervousness on all sides. So what I'd like to tell you is that there's a pretty comprehensive plan in place right now for what we're going to be doing, both as a division and then across the city, with the goal of making sure that the election is safe and fair and everyone feels comfortable expressing themselves, casting their vote at any polling place across the city. So please know that we'll be there doing that. It'll be in a variety of ways, you know, just being able to respond to calls for service or anything along those lines. But if you need us, please call 911. We have a specialized group all set up for the full day, and we'll be there to make sure that everyone gets to have a free and fair session when they're casting their ballot. And that's really what I have for now, and I'd love to do questions with the chief and with anyone else. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Captain King. Before we jump into that, I want to thank you both for being here and especially echo what Captain King has talked about on a couple points. I'm a data nerd, so I could sit on that site all day, which is why I have to ration myself because there's so much information. But it's really important that like he said, that everyone has access to this information. You can get the source data if you really want to run it through your own systems, which I actually have friends that do that stuff because, like I said, I'm a nerd and I know nerds. So we do that stuff, but it's really important that you have that information. And as the captain said, everybody is so accessible within TPD that if you see something and you're curious and you say, why is this like that? What's this anomaly? We can help get that information because it's really important, the transparency and the conversations that the data enables us to have, because the truth is there. We can see these things now that we can see this information. And also about the election, regardless of who you're voting for, please go out and vote. We want to make sure everybody's voices are heard. I know that TPD is partnering and working closely with the county, the sheriff's department, to make sure that people's experience is safe and everyone feels comfortable going to whatever polling location, drop box, et cetera, is available. So just to throw my support in there to get out and vote, and as early as possible, because I know they're going to be very busy processing everyone's ballots. So just please definitely go out and make your voice heard this election cycle. With that, I want to turn it over actually to Teresa. We have some questions, yes?
We do. So the first question is for Chief Ryan, and the question is, prior fire chiefs have discussed shutting down fire stations because of budget cuts. They always look in the southeast area, even though we have so many new homes and residents. Do you see any stations being shut down, and if so, will they be out here?
Short answer, no and no. So I can't, I don't, I follow a long line of excellent fire chiefs here in Tucson, and we are faced this. I have a good friend and is a colleague in another major city, and he says fire departments are big not-for-profit businesses, and it's true. So I do have to be mindful of a whole bunch of factors that go into the proper delivery of service within the budget that's allocated to us through the city manager and mayor and council. However, that being said, we have a very supportive city manager and mayor and council here for public safety. And it is not this fire chief's intent. I'll never say never, because as sure as I say it, something will go sideways. But it is my intent to keep every fire station in Tucson fully staffed and operational through whatever budget challenges we may face. I really can't speak to the decision chain before me, but I can tell you what Chuck Ryan's thought process is on it. And I have no intention to close fire stations anywhere in the city, let alone the southeast portion of the city.
All right, thank you, Chief Ryan. And while you were answering that question, due to technical difficulties, I will be asking a few questions while Teresa gets her Q&A panel back up and running. So the question actually looks like it's for me. Thank you for not cutting the police and fire budget this year, Councilwoman Lee. Do you think the council will have plans to cut public safety next year? What I can say is, our budget process, I'm sure we'll start. We're having conversations on a monthly basis now because of the economic impacts of COVID and our need to continue to really closely look at our revenues and expenses. So I know we're going to be looking at things very early on for the 2021-2022 fiscal year. And we're looking at some significant deficits coming up in general in terms of revenue, just because we're not bringing in as much money. So no, I've not heard of any conversation specifically on how we're going to deal with whatever revenue losses we may encounter, but core services from my perspective are number one. Police, fire, roads, and parks and recreation. Those are number one. So I will be going into any of those conversations with those as our top priorities, because we've got to deliver our core services. So I personally don't have any plans to make any cuts. I know that our departments right now are struggling as it is with staffing and attrition and dealing with a lot of issues that they're working through. So that's definitely not on my radar. And hopefully we won't have the impact that we're projecting to the revenue, and we won't have to make many cuts in general across the city. That's my goal. That's my hope. Teresa, let me know when your panel comes up. Otherwise, I'm going to keep pushing forward on the Q&A. Question is to TPD. What is being done to get the TPD higher pay to help keep and bring officers to Tucson?
Yeah, that's a good question, and this is just to be clear, this isn't just a Tucson phenomenon. This is really across the country where police departments are struggling to find good quality applicants, get them in the door, get them up to speed. And so one of the most common responses is, oh, well, pay. Pay is a factor, of course, and new people looking at departments will consider that. But that's not the only factor. So we have to also look at the health of the organization and the size of the organization, the type of work that they do, and really the perspective that the department has in terms of their relationship with the community. And so we're in a pretty good spot with Chief Magnus here in terms of how we relate to the community, working together with our partners in the city to really solve problems. And so we're finding interest from portions of the community that wouldn't necessarily be what you'd call stereotypical police officers, the people that would go into the department. We're seeing folks that are interested in law enforcement and kind of the way we do it here in Tucson, coming from areas at the U of A like sociology and psychology, because we deal a lot, obviously, with mental health issues and homelessness and other social issues that we have to deal with. So it's not only looking at pay per se, although that is a portion of what people look at. It's also making sure that we're engaging in these programs with with the community and finding the right people that want to come into the agency that are maybe hadn't thought of coming into police work, when really a big portion of what we do is right up their alley in terms of what they're studying or what they've done in the military or what they've worked on in other areas as they've grown up. So in terms of our overall picture, we're obviously, the chief's working closely with the city manager and the mayor and council to look at all of those things as a comprehensive package in terms of how do we get, and we want the best and the brightest, and also to retain our folks once they're here. So that's kind of the big picture, and it's a challenge, don't get me wrong, but it's certainly not a challenge just for Tucson, nor is it a challenge that we can't work together on to address.
Thank you, Captain King. All right, next question also for TPD. We have a lot of speeding on Houghton Road. Can we please have more officers in the area to write tickets?
Short and long answer is yes. So we were talking about some of the traffic related concerns, and I've heard them loud and clear, especially with the construction going. I know it's the major thoroughfare through there, and there's this huge interchange construction project happening, and we're mixing that with people that are just frustrated and driving quickly. So what TPD has done fairly recently is we've reconstituted our old traffic division. So what that means is they're centralized. We have all of our motors together. We have DUI or impaired driving enforcement together, and under one captain, and we're able to deploy them to different areas of the city in response to either self-generated activity or, of course, complaints coming from the community of like, hey, I just dealt with this speeder in my neighborhood or on the street. We have a major problem. We need police here. So the reason I brought that up is because, as a matter of fact, today I got another notice about Houghton, and it's kind of, especially coming from the freeway, people are speeding through the area. It's a construction zone, and then coming into the neighborhoods. So I was able to reach out to my colleague. He's a captain level traffic division head, and we're able to put together a plan. So that, yes, you will see more officers out there. You'll see motorcycle officers, and don't be surprised if you see police officers in the cruisers just sitting by the intersections, because we're trying to make both be visible to help people remember, okay, maybe I should slow down a little bit. Well, at the same time, if we do need to do enforcement, we'll have the resources and the people there to do so.
All right, thank you. All right, here is another one. I live in Savano and hear a lot of loud race cars, motorcycles, and drag racing in the middle of the night. What can we do to stop the kids from drag racing? Isn't there a law so that they can't have loud exhaust on their cars and wake up the neighborhood in the middle of the night?
They are, and believe me, I know what that feels like. I've lived in a neighborhood as well where it is loud and it wakes you up at night. So yes, it's both the law. They can't have the loud exhaust, and they can't be drag racing in any streets here in the state. So what we do ask is, you know, I spoke about the traffic and that's still part of it, but if you hear it or you see it, please call us. I know some folks are thinking, well, maybe it's not an emergency. It doesn't really, you know, it doesn't really rise to calling 911. It does help me track where it's happening, because what these kids are very technologically savvy. They get online and they'll decide, tonight we're going to go to X location, and that's where that's all going to happen. And so it's very difficult for us to track it until it starts. So your calls do help me send our resources there, to send the officers there to help address the concerns as they're happening. So definitely please call 911.
All right, thank you. And I was smiling while I was reading that question, not because I'm insensitive to the question, but while we were preparing for this call, Captain King could hear those noises coming through my headphones because I live in the general area of this comment, and he could hear it firsthand. So that's why I was smiling, because he literally heard it through my speakers. Another question to TPD. And to TPD, an incident of BLM and Antifa were at a church causing havoc in a parking lot during services. TPD was called by 12 individuals and all put on hold by 911. An officer told a parishioner TPD with BLM and Antifa and a no interference policy. Is this true? I just read it verbatim, so I don't know the location of this church or anything like that, but that was the question.
Okay, so I guess I don't necessarily understand the last part about a policy of no interaction, but I'm familiar with this incident, and we're looking into it. We've been able to contact both the pastor and one of the main individuals that had contacted either the police or at least was one of the last persons to write me. So we're able to start piecing it together. What I've also done is sent the incident history and the location to our communications department. They're separate from the police department, so they have their own investigative protocols. They're able to look at, you know, the time the calls came in, who answered, why they weren't answered, what was the call load as a whole at the time, because if there's a bunch of people calling at one time, they may be pushing each other off. Or if there's another emergency call happening at the time where the lines are just being overloaded. So I can't answer yet because it's still being looked at, but I am familiar with it. I know which one you're talking about, and we have reached out to both the church as well as the communications department to review kind of the circumstances surrounding it.
Okay, thank you for that answer. I promise you, Chief Ryan, we have one down here for you, so it's coming. I can see it. Okay, next question is, we see a lot of Facebook posts from people having things stolen out of their cars, including guns, because they leave their car doors unlocked. I don't want my tax dollars spent on irresponsible car owners. Officers have more important calls to deal with. Can we charge people for misusing public safety and leaving unlocked guns in their car?
Well, yeah, so we wouldn't necessarily charge individuals, but it is a concern, and it's not only a local concern. There's actually a large move called Lock It or Lose It, and we were able to talk a little bit about that during one of the neighborhood meetings, and we really want to re-emphasize with neighbors the fact that most of these crimes will happen when it's easy. So if your car door is unlocked, people get into the car, they may have no idea what's in there, or that there's a firearm, or that there's any kind of valuables in there. Although part of what you need to evaluate when you're leaving your car is, do I have a backpack showing up in the back that's just laying there, or do I have my laptop sitting on the front? Something that maybe entices someone to look in your car even further and test the doors. So Lock It or Lose It is a thing we keep pushing as a department, and I know the ward office has spread the word as well. They're good partners in that. So please remind your neighbors to do so. When the guns are stolen, for example, that is a concern for us. We take the information, we enter it into the national database, and we're able to try to locate it and link it. But it does put a firearm in an unknown person's hands. So really, there should be no reason to ever leave a firearm unattended in a car. And if the criminal investigation, if there is a criminal investigation connected to the incident, reveals that there was some kind of negligence in terms of either the gun was left behind, or somebody purposefully gave it to somebody that they shouldn't have had access to, there could potentially be criminal charges that come from the fact that the gun was stolen or left behind. So it's just really important for all of our safety and for our community's health that, if you can, you should lock the doors, keep all your valuables out of sight. Remember, lock it or lose it. You could actually look it up online, and never leave a firearm in a car unattended.
And I don't think a lot of people probably think about writing down the serial number of their firearms. And that's probably an important thing to do as well.
That
right?
is
I mean,
great point. That is, yes, Councilwoman, that's a great point, because that's actually what we use to enter it into the national database, and we're able to track it and help find it and recover it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. To TPD, how many officers last year versus this year? So that's one part of the question. How many officers, sworn officers, deployable officers did we have last year versus this year? Have you seen an exit of officers over the last several months this year due to lack of backing by the mayor and council members? How many officers are we currently short? So it's kind of a three-part question, but that's the three questions.
Yeah, and so I don't have all of the numbers in front of me. I wasn't prepared for that direct question, but what I can tell you is it's looked at every month by the chief and his staff, and we have an HR staff that looks at it as well. Earlier in the year, we were under, it was called healthy attrition, because we always have an expected attrition rate, right? So that's between 6 and 8 officers, and that would be for planned retirements, medical retirements, things of that nature, where it's really, it happens every year. We know it's going to happen. It's called a healthy attrition. And then there's the unhealthy attrition. That's really where we try to focus our efforts. And that'll be people leaving for other agencies. That'll be people leaving law enforcement just generally before they've reached their age of retirement or their tenure where they can retire. And so that has been, it was pretty high in 2019 at times, and then it came back down and actually went below, where our normal attrition is, and it's come back up a little bit. So it's always cyclical, and it's not like there's one factor that says, okay, everyone's leaving because of one thing. A lot of, we won't get too far into the weeds on this, but there's a lot of stress on officers, as I'm sure we've all known, and there's considerations for people where it's like, do I want to stay in law enforcement at all? And so we've seen people just leave to go to work at Amazon or to other places, leaving the state completely. So those are things that are a little bit harder to address. I mean, obviously we want to retain as many people as possible, but it's different than folks just jumping to go to like another agency next door, for example, where there'd be more control, I think, with the mayor and council being able to review that with the chief's office and kind of come up with a plan. It's hard to keep someone from going to a private employer right now, but it's always being tracked. Like I said, they look at it regularly, and we want to keep the numbers right at healthy attrition. So I hope that answers 3 parts.
Yeah, and not to go off on a tangent, but I did, have a meeting today with the city manager, and we talked about this specific topic because it is on all of our radars and how we're going to deal with it. And as you said, Captain King, it's so multifaceted with how we keep people, how we attract people. And being a military veteran myself and sitting here looking at you too, it takes a special type of person to be willing to put on that uniform, whatever it is, and go out in harm's way every single day. So even that means it's a small population of people that are willing to take on that kind of risk and put themselves out there for their community. So I know it's a special type of person that you're trying to find and keep, and it's a tough job. So from my perspective, I'm very focused on how we support you guys, we support our first responders, and do everything we can to keep them. So that's just me and my random extra comment. It wasn't directed at me, but I just wanted to throw that out there since we've been talking about it as well. Question for Chief Ryan: how has COVID-19 impacted the Tucson Fire Department?
Okay, so 2 ways. First and foremost, it definitely affected the way we do business. The firefighters are used to showing up on an incident scene and going in, if for a medical call, going into somebody's house in a group of 2 or 6 if it's a medic truck and an engine that show up, that sort of thing. COVID-19 changed that script for us completely, right? So We switched to minimizing the number of people we would actually send into a person's residence to lower that contact when the call type was of such that it would indicate that the person may have COVID or a COVID type illness. So that was one way. We at the early stages of this, following CDC guidance, really burned through a lot of our personal protective gear in terms of face covers, masks, N95 respirators, Tyvek suits, eye protection, all kinds of stuff, because there were so many unknowns. So it affected us operationally, it affected us logistically in terms of being able to keep pace with the gear demand that we were encountering. And we switched our script also in terms of dealing with folks with telemedicine. Through our hospital partners here, we were able to set up a telemedicine link where our providers would show up, our paramedics would show up at somebody's house. And unless they were acutely ill, in which case, of course, we would treat them. But if they're just experiencing general malaise, flu-like symptoms, things like that, we would connect them with a physician through a telemedicine link, through an iPhone, and they would talk to a doctor and get a quick telemedicine visit, and the decision would be made by that doctor and patient whether or not that person needed transport to the hospital or if they could wait and go see their primary care physician or a standalone clinic or something like that. So some real interesting service delivery dynamics that we had to face. The other side of the question, and maybe the one you were really getting to, is how has it impacted our workforce? I can tell you that we are both extremely good and extremely lucky. Out of nearly 8,000 known COVID positive patient or presumptive positive patient encounters, we have only had 25 members of our workforce contract the illness. And of that 25, the vast majority, through contact tracing, we know has come from off-duty contacts with family, friends within the community, because it is a community spread virus, we know. Very limited number of occupational exposures to COVID that resulted in illness. That's an amazing statistic. I count it as a huge W for us compared to the experiences they've had up in the Valley in Phoenix, Mesa, Scottsdale, Tempe, and some of my peer departments in other parts of the country where they've had up to a third of their workforce sidelined for 2 to 3 weeks with the illness. Our folks have done an amazing job, and I couldn't be more proud of our men and women for it.
That's awesome. Not to name drop other cities, but you just did, and I'll take it. You guys are doing amazing. All right, another one for you, Chief. I've read several articles about firefighters getting cancer from the job. What is Tucson doing to keep our firefighters safe? Great question.
Yeah, awesome question. One of the things that drew me to apply for this position from the department I was in back east was the fact that Tucson was really on the forefront of cancer awareness, cancer mitigation and reduction strategies. So what do? I talked back at the beginning about the upgraded personal protective equipment, structural turnout gear that we provide our firefighters that has improved thermal and vapor protection and bloodborne pathogen protection barriers built into it. We do a wash down. If you ever see us on a scene where there's been an active fire, our crews are out there, and it's really simple. It doesn't take a lot, right? But they're out there with a brush and a bucket and some soapy water and a hose, and they take turns scrubbing each other down before they doff their personal protective gear to get those contaminants, those products of combustion off the gear, to try to minimize to the extent possible that exposure. We issue multiple hoods, so firefighters, if you've seen a firefighter dressed up, one of the things we have, looks like a race car driver hood. It's called a balaclava. It's made of Nomex. It's fire resistant material, and it only allows you to see your face through it. But that particular piece of protective gear is fabric, right? So and the collar on the coat only buttons up so far. So those hoods have to be washed very regularly. So we have multiple hoods that our firefighters use. So if they go on a fire, they can wash down their exterior structural firefighting gear, toss that dirty hood into the extractor, get it cleaned, and have a fresh hood in case for that second call that comes in. Some of the station enhancements, diesel vehicle exhaust extraction systems, the positive pressure ventilation in the gear storage rooms, our firefighters don't even wear their station shoes in the station. So we require folks to wear shoes that have either steel toe or the composite toe for toe protection, and a steel or composite shank for sole protection, so there's no punctures or anything. But because those shoes go into people's homes, out on the street, the firefighters are really great about taking their shoes off when they get off the apparatus and they put on station shoes. We got a lot of people with interesting Crocs walking around our firehouses, which is really cool to see. And the department I came from is a really progressive and innovative department, but even they weren't doing that. So it's those little things that all add up to help us minimize the potential for one of our firefighters contracting occupational cancer. That said, this is a dangerous profession. You are, as a firefighter, almost 28% more likely than any other occupation other than coal mining to contract an occupational cancer. Captain King was talking about recruiting challenges. Boy, talk about a recruiting challenge for the fire service. Who wants to sign up for that, right? Thankfully, there are people that still want to do this job. So cancer is a reality. Occupational cancer is a reality, and it's just my job as fire chief and my executive staff to make sure that our firefighters get the best gear, have the best equipment, and are using the best current practices to mitigate their exposures.
Amen to all that. Yeah, you guys have a really difficult job, and we appreciate everything you guys do. All right, next question also for you, Chief Ryan. A couple of years ago, an event was held at the Areta Ranch Fire Station where my kids were able to play games, try on the fire suit, and tour trucks and the station. We had such a great time and my kids learned a lot. Will you be doing that again? We really enjoyed it.
I want to say yes. I will say yes, because I'm confident. This is not the new normal. This is just the temporary normal. Yeah, probably what you're talking about is in connection with National Fire Prevention Week, which is usually the second week in October every year, and it culminates at firehouses nationally with an open house day where we invite the community in and have fun games for the kids and give fire safety instruction and things like that. So yeah, I'm glad you had that great experience. I know our men and women are really anxious to get back to doing that kind of stuff, and certainly when conditions allow, we'll do that again.
Excellent. I think that sounds like a great time. All right. This actually is a question for both of your departments. Are there any non-matching grants you are currently going after to help fund your departments? Let's go to Captain King first and give Chief a minute to catch his breath with all of his popular questions.
Firefighters get the cool questions about fun events and stuff. We miss it too at TPD. And so I know we'll get out there one of these days very soon and be able to do community events again face to face. So in terms of grants, we always are having some type of grant activity taking place. We actually have our communications administrator, Lisa Marcula, who kind of leads a grant writing group, and they help with either identified grants that either we've gotten in the past or we're trying to renew, and then also identify new opportunities for funding to help certain programs. One of the most well-known programs, at least to the community, is some of our DPS grants, statewide highway traffic grants, where you'll see officers out doing little breathalyzer checks just to help people understand what, when they leave a bar. This was, of course, in the old normal. We're in the temporary normal right now. But, those types of activities, traffic enforcement. So we're always looking for opportunities to help augment particular programs and help, with equipment purchases and things like that help our men and women doing what they need to do.
From the fire side, it's a challenge to find non-matching grants. However, we were very lucky. There's two federal grant programs. One is called SAFER, which deals with staffing for fire departments, and the other one's called AFG, Assistance to Firefighter Grants. Both are administered by DHS FEMA. We just received a couple of weeks ago a non-matching award of $5.4 million spread over 3 years. So that's $1.8 million per year And the really nice part about this, the really exciting part, is that normally SAFER grants require a fire department to add staff. You have to commit to add additional headcount, not quote unquote supplant an existing budget with federal monies. This year, especially due to the challenges posed by the pandemic, DHS FEMA grant folks changed the rules on that and allowed departments to make a case for simply getting federal assistance to meet existing needs. And right now in Tucson Fire, we have about 19 vacancies. We do have a recruit class plan for January, February timeframe, which will help us get ahead with that a little bit. But in order to compensate for that, we applied for a federal grant to assist us with our firefighter salaries and benefits. And we were very, very lucky and fortunate to have been awarded that. So that's a really exciting piece of news. The other grant, AFG, typically it has a matching requirement, but this time it's a very small matching requirement. We received a $1.38 million grant to put a 20-person paramedic class together at Pima Community College through their paramedic training program. It has a 10% match requirement. So to me, $138,000 match on a $1.38 million grant, I'll take it. Another big W, because that means the city of Tucson will, by this time next year, have 20 brand new, exciting and excited paramedic firefighters. So 2 big wins for us this year in an otherwise pretty crazy year.
Definitely great news. And just for the sake of time, because we only have a couple minutes left, there are a series of comments and questions really around speeding, street racing, and they identify specific areas where that's happening. So I'm going to see if my team can scrape these comments off and send them to you, Captain King, so you kind of have some locations to possibly pass on to some officers that they can specifically focus on those areas, since we can't go through each specific one. Also a comment about are we posting jobs in California, Illinois, and New York to possibly attract police officers from there and steal some of their officers to Tucson? We don't need to necessarily answer that. I want to respect everyone's time. We're under a minute left, but I appreciate that idea. I was born and raised in Illinois, and if we can bring some people out here, they'll enjoy the weather a lot more. So I am all for that. And then one good question, though, that I do want from Mr. Al Wyruth, who is very involved in the Rita Ranch neighborhood, has a question. With an increase of homes being built out on Marianne Cleveland Way, and this is for you, Chief Ryan, by Cienega High School, is there a plan to add another fire station out that way?
Great question, Mr. Wyruth. So we are constantly looking at our service response dynamics and response times and where pockets of growth are in the city. Certainly that area that you're mentioning is ripe for a new fire station. We would love to place a fire station there eventually. It's not presently on the books. However, it is on my forecast. And, you know, one of the things on go back to my slides real quickly, I know we're short on time, but I was real proud to put the logo up there that Tucson, the city of Tucson, enjoys a Class 1 insurance service organization ISO rating. And that's a direct function of the degree of fire protection and water delivery infrastructure for fire protection that the city of Tucson has. And as the city grows, in order to maintain that Class 1 rating, the fire department's going to have to grow. And it's not my formula, it's not Councilwoman Lee's formula, it's the ISO. And the benefit to the residents and property owners in Tucson is that the lower number, so the Class 1 number, means you get a discount. A residential or commercial property owner receives a fairly substantial discount, if you will, on your hazard insurance premiums as compared to people who live in municipalities that have a Class 2, 3, 4, 5, or higher ISO rating. So my goal as fire chief is to make sure that for as long as I'm here, we stay a Class 1 organization. And if that means we have to build new firehouses, then I'll be knocking on doors and asking for money to do it.
Great. Thank you for fitting that question in. And I know that we may have other folks that have questions, but just for the sake of time, and we're up against our time box for today. If you do have additional questions, I want to encourage you to please send those in to us so that we can facilitate getting those answered for you. Our email address is ward4@tucsonaz.gov, and our team will make it a priority to get whatever questions answered that we couldn't get answered for you tonight. So with that, I want to thank Captain King. I want to thank Chief Ryan. I want to thank my team for working the back end magic of these events all throughout this year to make this available. And thank you all for your time tonight. Just a quick kind of plug. Again, we're going to be going through the next couple months of really thinking through strategically what we want to bring to Ward 4 constituents in terms of content. So if you have ideas for topics for a town hall that you're interested in hearing about, also please send those to the ward4@tucsonaz.gov email address. Same thing as we create our strategic goals. What is important to you that you want us to be marching to in 2021? That feedback is really important as we shape those for ourselves. So continue to keep reaching out to our office. 791-3199 is our phone number. Email as well, and I'm wishing you all a safe and happy holiday season, and we will resume these in January. So take care, everyone, and thank you all for your time this evening.